This week on The Record, cleaning up Coldwater Creek. House Republican Tricia Burns reacts to the staggering new cost to cleaning up nuclear waste from our area. Speaker standoff. Congress is still paralyzed, 16 days and counting, and still no one can claim the gavel. The fight for abortion access. How Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is leading a new nationwide effort. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Congress remains paralyzed without a speaker. 16 days ago, House Republicans stripped Speaker Kevin McCarthy of his gavel to punish him for cutting a bipartisan deal with Democrats to keep the government open at the time. We'll have more on that race to replace the speaker in our next segment. But first, we turn to the cost and consequences of inaction, not just on Capitol Hill, but in federal agencies themselves, those agencies tasked with protecting the public. We just got new word this week on the rising cost to clean up radioactive waste that threatens the health and safety of people living along Coldwater Creek and throughout the St. Louis region. The nonpartisan Government Accountability Office, which often advises members of Congress, now says the estimated cost to clean up Coldwater Creek in North St. Louis County has more than doubled. Other nuclear waste dumping sites around the country face a similar dilemma. Missouri House Representative Tricia Burns is now on the record, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You represent a portion of people impacted directly by this nuclear waste that's left over, but I understand it may also impact you and your family directly as well.
Yes, so I have a son that was one of 50 in medical history that had the type of cancer he had. It was a pediatric thymoma.
Extremely rare.
Yes, and with that was a canary in the coal mine, and it led me to connect to the other sites. And the reason why I ran, the passion behind it, is to find out what happened in our community and how to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen for generations to come.
So you want a seat in the Missouri House of Representatives because of the nuclear fallout and its impact, its risk to your son?
Well, my son was the catalyst for it, right? And that's the passion that kept me going for the entire region. What I've noticed is when I talk to moms who have children that have died, mine fortunately is still very healthy. Really, it just made me angry to get to the bottom of what happened.
And if we're speaking candidly, there's limited options that a state representative can have on this national picture. Understanding that, I do want to get your reaction to some of the details in this 83-page report. I see you brought it with you.
Yes.
One of the notes in there shows that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had an extra $182 million in its budget last year. It could have spent cleaning up contamination. Instead, it did not spend that money, leaving it on the table in their budget. How would you describe the Army Corps of Engineers' urgency? Is it apathetic? Is it indifferent? Is it just a matter of bureaucratic red tape? What's your sense?
Well, when I look at this report, it's what I see at every site across the region. It is a just complete mismanagement, mishandling, mischaracterization, and missed deadlines. Ultimately, the GAO failed them for their role in cleaning up the FUSAREP sites.
There's also the transparency side, which
Yes.
some of your colleagues or neighbors might have spoken to. I know some of the advocates I've spoken with, they brought it up. They feel very strongly that if government had spent as much time cleaning this up as they did covering it up, we wouldn't be here.
In this audit, one of the criteria was having a lesson learned database. And the GAO does say that it was partially met. And what the Army Corps says is that they don't have they document their lessons, but they don't have a learned database. So what they do is in their annual meetings, they have slide decks and they talk about it, and then they can go back and refer to their slide decks to talk about the problems that they're seeing while this has ballooned is because they continually find more contamination.
This is just the cleanup side. There's also the side that would make victims whole. The Senate just recently approved compensation for victims. I imagine including your son. I don't know if his ailment falls on that list of qualifying.
No, he does not.
I don't know if they would update that legislation. That's a different question.
Right.
But any victims who would fall under that umbrella to qualify can't cash those checks, not until the House also takes up this plan and approves the bill. But they can't do that anything until they elect a speaker. If they can't even pick someone to lead themselves, let alone decide what they're going to do, does that end up hurting the Republican brand?
Well, I definitely think we need to get together and take action on that. It is impacting me, my fellow representatives in the state, because we went to DC and we fought for this legislation, and the train was moving pretty well. The committee was already selected, and we had more recommendations on zip codes that committee would review. We are all on hold waiting for this decision on the speaker.
You're here to talk mainly about this, but there's been a bit of news breaking from Jefferson City just this week. I don't want to put you sideways or get you in a fight with the Speaker of the House, but he just abruptly fired his chief of staff. Some of the members of his staff had also cited concerns about potential impropriety over this software contract that might go to somebody that had some campaign connections. I don't think any of us really know what all happened there just yet. Do you find Chief Clerk Dana Miller a reputable person?
From what I know, I do respect her, and I don't know how much she plays a role in this or how much somebody else from the House staff would have played a role in this. But I want you to know, we never had a vote on this software program.
Right.
They don't tell us what paper to use, what software programs to use.
And had it come to a vote, you would have been a no?
I would have been a no because I'm not using it. Now others, what I understand, others do use that software, but Dean never was putting that to a vote. I don't understand how this, well, I do understand, right? He's running for a statewide office, and there's a primary.
So you think this is a hit job?
I think it's a hit job.
Interesting.
Completely.
The chief clerk, she wrote about, quote, growing concerns of unethical and perhaps unlawful conduct. The FBI took a look at this because she said Plocher might be, quote, connecting this contract with campaign activity. Do you have any reason not to believe her?
What I have found is that when you hear stuff on social media or when something gets sunshined within a week, right, there's a setup somewhere. I think that we just have to ask more questions. I know Dean to be a strong leader. The whole reason why we're even talking about the radioactive waste, he created that path for us. He didn't have to. And when I started, people told me there wasn't much interest there, and it would take me 8 years to be heard. I was heard by spring. So to me, that is a strong sign of leadership, and I'm gonna look to the leader that has helped my region, and I'm gonna wait to hear the facts.
Are you satisfied with the current construct that the state provides you, this software mechanism? Are you satisfied with the way it works?
I'm satisfied, but I work a little differently. People know I give out my personal cell phone, and they call me, and as you can see, I'm a representative for Wentzville in District 63, but I represent Missourians. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're harmed by this waste, I am too, my family is too, and you can call me, and there's not a person that I've spoke to that I haven't made sure that they have my cell phone and they know they can reach out to me. So I feel like I do good with the tools that I have. I had no reason to look into this software, but I don't know what other legislation other representatives are working on, and I'm going to trust that they handle themselves professionally until told otherwise.
Representative Tricia Burns, thank you for joining us. Political observers in St. Louis might remember that line, rudderless ship of chaos. How long before that dubious distinction might stick to a do-nothing Congress?
What's the forecast in Florida?
What's it like in Belleville?
No matter where you are.
What's the forecast in St. Peter's?
Or how you get your weather.
We know you want the forecast for your backyard. And you want it now.
Right here and right now.
The 5 on your side, Weather First team. Focused on you.
Congress remains paralyzed without a speaker tonight. Jim Jordan pushing for a third vote on his bid to take that gavel tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Will he get it, or will his team's hardball tactics push it farther out of grasp? Republicans Ann Wagner, Mike Boss, Jason Smith, and Mary Miller are all backing Jordan's bid. Former Illinois Congressman Rodney Davis is now on the record. My first question for you is, could you vote for Jim Jordan as Speaker?
Of course. I mean, look, I was always somebody who voted with the team when we got to the floor. If Jim Jordan would have been the candidate that got the most votes in our conference and was sent to the floor of the House for a vote, I have always supported that nominee.
How would you describe the headwinds that Jim Jordan faces now at this juncture?
Oh, it doesn't look good. I think right now, from conversations that I've had with some in Washington, that it could only get worse. He went from 20 no votes to 22. You look around at some of my former colleagues that are now throwing their name out as potential candidates for Speaker. That doesn't bode well for the Speaker designee at this point. And Jim is unfortunately not in a better spot. He's in a much worse spot than when he started.
A number of House Republicans have reported death threats against them for flipping their votes against Jim Jordan or announcing their intent to vote against Jim Jordan. You know firsthand what those death threats sound like, feel like, and what they look like in reality from that softball game those years ago. What do you think is ultimately responsible for this rise in threats against public officials?
The responsibility lies with those who make the threats. And I had a conversation with one of my former colleagues today who received a death threat yesterday because of their vote on this speaker's race. And in the end, you have to hold those who are making those threats accountable and make them an example. There's an individual from Rochester, Illinois, who has a felony on his record because he thought it was a good idea one day to leave a voicemail message promising to blow my effing head off. Well, he was prosecuted and he now has paid a price, and I didn't get any threats after that was publicized. So I always say punish to the fullest extent of the law. But we've got a problem here in this country, Mark. If you look at some recent polling that came out of the University of Virginia, 41% of Democrats polled believe violence is justified in actually responding to political division. 38% of Republicans believe the same thing. Those numbers are way too high. And we've got to do what we can to tone down the temperature. And this speaker's race, the only person that can tone down the temperature that is affecting members who may disagree with him is Jim Jordan. And Jim's got to do his job to make sure that he puts a message out to everyone that any violent threats or violence is unacceptable.
It's interesting because Jim Jordan is saying it's time for us all to come together. Now that he's ascending the throne of power, perhaps, and wants to lay claim to that gavel, he's saying come together. But for years, he was the attack dog, attacking John Boehner, attacking Paul Ryan, attacking others. Do you see any irony in that?
I got to tell you, Jim is a much different person and a much different congressman than he was in my early terms in Congress. From 2012 to 2018, I thought Jim Jordan wouldn't get more than 10 votes for Speaker, let alone only 20 against him. When we were in the minority together, I developed a good friendship with Jim, a very good working relationship with Jim. And I can tell you, he is a different type of leader. He has been one who has mentored people to be part of the team. So I'm not surprised that Jim has morphed into a speaker's candidate right now. I'm surprised that Steve Scalise was not able to garner more support, but I'm not surprised that Jim is where he is right now.
We're on day 16, going on day 17, with a paralyzed Congress. For most Americans, that's a full paycheck and then some. Should members of Congress be paid if they can't even elect a speaker?
Yes. Members of Congress should be paid. They're doing their job. They're serving their constituents.
Are they?
100%. Yes. They're not stopping helping their constituents who call their office. Their office is running. The individuals who work for them are going out into their district, dealing with concerns that their constituents have, constituents that call in with the passport issue or an issue with Social Security or Medicare are getting their service. And members of Congress are fighting about politics right now. It doesn't mean we come up with some cockamamie idea, let's not pay someone. I mean, come on. When you ask me dumb questions over the years, should I have called your station and say, those questions are stupid, you shouldn't be paid?
Well, it's not a question of whether the question was dumb or not. It was, did I show up to work? You often liked to say that you were bipartisan, one of the most bipartisan members of Congress when you were on the Hill. But it also seemed to me, just observing, that you really relished the fights with Democrats. Earlier in this interview, you said you'd be a team player and fight with the Democrats, as politicians often do. Could you ever see a path in this congressional culture toward a bipartisan deal to put a bipartisan speaker in place?
Well, there's talk right now of a bipartisan push to make Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry have more authority. So yes, I do see that. But in reality, I don't see the odds for that happening, because you have to remember the Democrats are going to get just as much pressure from their donors but just as much pressure from their leadership team. That is going to say the Republicans need to remain in chaos. This will help us get the majority in the next Congress. I think it's possible, but highly unlikely. And Republicans likely will have to figure this out, figure out who the speaker or the speaker pro tem with extended powers is going to be.
And if you could put your analyst hat on for just a minute before we let you go, does this have an impact on the way those swing voters make up their mind about which party can govern if the Republicans can't put a speaker in place?
That's a great question, Mark. It depends on how long this chaos lasts. If it continues to last past the 45 days that the continuing resolution to fund government is in place for, then absolutely more Americans are going to remember this. If it's solved here in the next few days, I think it's out of sight, out of mind, and really can be a benefit to Republicans who were working to solve the problem. Remember, my freshman year in Congress, we experienced the shutdown of 2013, and Democrats ran hundreds of thousands of dollars in ads during that shutdown, trying to capitalize on me being part of the Republican majority during that shutdown. My commitment to govern, and I was able to turn that commitment into an 18-point victory in the next election. They can make something good out of this if they're governing in the right direction.
All right, former Illinois Congressman Rodney Davis, thank you for joining us. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker wants America to think big on abortion. We look back at the top events in Illinois and Missouri politics this week when we come back.
Most people think this is St. Louis, but we know better. It's our neighborhoods, our people, and that's our focus. Because no story is bigger than the one that affects you. 5 on your side, focused on you.
Some high-profile politicians in Illinois and Missouri are making a splash in national politics this week. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker launching Think Big America, a dark money group to influence abortion ballot measures across the country in the upcoming presidential election year. His media rollout of that Think Big America accompanied a glowing profile of Pritzker in The New Yorker. That article borrowing on similar themes in a Chicago Magazine profile of Pritzker years ago before he would eventually launch Think Big in Illinois, where he won the governor's race, something to watch later. Illinois also faces a deadline to extend a tax credit scholarship program designed to help kids in poverty gain access to private schools. Former Governor Bruce Rauner signed off on that Invest in Kids program back in 2017. Pritzker has kept it alive so far until now. We'll have more on that impact of this program Sunday night on 5 on Your Side. In Missouri, some disruption in the People's House. Speaker Dean Plocher abruptly parted ways with his chief of staff. And in a chamber with term limits and a revolving door shuffling speakers in and out every 2 years, a chief of staff who had served 3 consecutive speakers gives an upper hand and institutional knowledge to that office. His departure coming amid news that Plocher has faced criticism from within his own staff over ethical or legal concerns about potentially steering state business to a private contractor, allegedly for some perceived political benefit. Plocher has denied those claims. And a former attorney for Trump was in court today. Sidney Powell pleaded guilty to Georgia election interference charges. She was one of the former president's lawyers after his 2020 election loss to Joe Biden. Prosecutors expect her to cooperate and testify in the election fraud case. And the former president will have a familiar face joining his legal defense team. Missouri lawyer Will Scharf, running for attorney general in the GOP primary, announced online this week he's signed on to defend Donald Trump from charges that he tried to interfere in that swing state of Georgia.
Get the content that matters to you on your time. Breaking news as it happens.
We are following breaking news at this hour.
Weather alerts when you need them. Live streams and newscasts on your schedule. On air, online, on our app, and on 5+. No matter where you go or how you watch, 5 on your side, focused on you.
In that earlier interview with former Congressman Rodney Davis, he made a claim we hadn't heard before. He said a recent poll found more Democrats viewed violence as justified as a means to address political division. So let's check the record. Turns out Davis was right on those numbers. While the margin is close, the framing of the question does add some more context. Democrats who participated in that survey were asked this question, quote, people who support the Republican Party and its ideologies have become so extreme in what they want that it's acceptable to use violence to stop them from achieving their goals. And vice versa. Republicans were asked the same question of Democrats. 41% of Biden supporters and 38% of Trump supporters said it's acceptable to use violence to stop people who have become, quote, so extreme in what they want. Note that bit of justification there. The other person who disagrees with me is so extreme, I have no choice. That's a rationale that surrenders the fight for democracy itself. And according to a young Abraham Lincoln, insults the sacrifice soldiers made to deliver that gift. In 1838, Lincoln gave an impassioned defense of the rule of law, arguing against mob rule. He said, quote, by instances of the perpetrators of such acts going unpunished, the lawless in spirit are encouraged to become lawless in practice. And having been used to no restraint, but dread of punishment, they thus become absolutely unrestrained. And having ever regarded government as their deadliest bane, They make a jubilee of the suspension of its operations, sound familiar? And pray for nothing so much as its total annihilation. Maybe, just maybe, there's something familiar connecting the spirit of those who would occupy positions of power to wage protest and shut Congress down, and those who would threaten those members with death if they don't get their way. Another Illinois Republican president, Ronald Reagan, made a similar appeal to compromise when he said simply, peace is not absence of conflict, it's the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. Before we go, we want to take a moment to share that today is our final digital-only version of The Record. Next week, our show gets a new home and a new airtime. Tune in October 29 for the broadcast launch of The Record right after Sports Plus. And of course, we'll always be streaming here with you on 5 Plus. Until then, we're off the record.